Hi, puzzle friends. Today I'm solving the animals puzzle in the Circle of Color series of Ravensburger. So, obviously, I'm starting with flipping the pieces, and I decided to put my pieces on the right side of the table and the assembling area on the left side because I knew I would start in the green section, and the green section is on the left side of the image. So, once I had assembled the green area, I would have to move everything around this green area from the left side where the pieces are and then around the green area. So, yeah, that would have cost a lot of time. And it's something I usually try to avoid when doing a puzzle. For example, I don't do the edges first because I would have to move, the pieces over the edge inside to the assembling area. So that's why I decided to have this arrangement of my table. As you can see, during the flipping, I'm collecting primarily green pieces because, as I mentioned, I would like to start with that. But also the pieces for the very center part of the image or the puzzle because they stand out by having a very curved shape and are a bit lighter than the other pieces. Yeah. And for this region, I also know that there's a chameleon and a liguan, which go together quite easily. So I also collect those pieces. What I also do when flipping the pieces is connecting pieces I already know belong together, but only if they are very close to each other. For example, I obviously know that in the middle, the very center piece connects with the others, but I believe I will be faster if I put it together later when having the other pieces around. But for example, this red zebra down there, I connected them because they were very close together in the pile, so I can treat them as one piece later if I connect it already. As I've already mentioned, I am sorting out parts for several areas at the same time. And I want to say that this is a bit risky because, as you can see here, I mix up the piles and put the wrong parts in the wrong pile, which makes the whole thing a bit more chaotic. But I think didn't cost me too much time later on, precisely because I was aware of this and remembered to pick up the pieces in the other piles when putting them together. So I'm starting the assembling with the central circle of the puzzle. And as you can see, I struggled putting these two pieces of the chameleon together, which usually only happens on the circle of colors and not the regular shapes for me. Yeah, I'm mainly going by the curves here. And then I put together the yellow liguan, which is pretty easy because it has four very uniquely shaped pieces that interlock very well. Then I move on to the pelican, and I usually divide the pelican into three sections, which are the tail with dark green patterns on it, the head with the yellow parts, and obviously the beak with the light green and blue and reds. And what you can see really well is that if everything works perfectly, my hands really put in piece after piece alternately. I'm sorry you can see it, but what I'm doing next is putting together the zebra. And I approached it by building the edge first and then trying to use the mane to see what goes where. And I'm sorry again that you can see it, but next I'm putting together the very green bird. It's easily separable into the wings and the tail, and then I just put those two parts together. I'm collecting pieces of the turtle and the peacock now because they both are very dark green turquoise shaded. And on the peacock, the curved shapes of the pieces help a lot to put it together. And with the turtle, it's also easy because there's only four pieces with the dark, and the rest is easy to fill in then. This light green iguana I'm working on next goes together pretty easily because the piece shapes are very distinguishable. Because the upper parts all have very little green on it and are very wide shapes, and then the legs and the tail go together. Trying to clean up the remaining pieces here a bit and put in the blues I have. If they hadn't gone in as easily as they did, I would have just abandoned them up there and got back to them later not to lose too much time. I'm continuing with the crocodile, which is a rather hard part of the puzzle. I exactly remember where two of the pieces go in, and then the rest I try to use the size of the spine pattern on the back of the crocodile and its feet to fill in the rest of the pieces. Then I was a little undecided what to continue with. Originally, I wanted to do the leopard, but then I thought it would be easier to go with the giraffe instead, as it's closer to the greens I already had. So I grabbed pieces for both, but messed up the piles a lot. And then I also grabbed this very orange lioness because it's even closer to the greens than the giraffe. So I definitely did a little too much at the same time here. So I'm starting to assemble this orange lioness, which is pretty easy as it's on the edge, and you can easily use the curve of the pieces to detect what goes next to the edge, and then just fill in the rest. Then for the giraffe, I try to use the brown line on its neck to put together the whole upper part. And then the pieces that are fully covered by the giraffe pattern belong to the body, and then you only have the feet left. And then for the leopard, once again, I start by building the edge first. And then I do the upper part, including its face. And then this leaves only very uniquely shaped pieces I can easily spot with two very tiny noses. Um, and then I build a sandwich, having the upper part done and the lower part done, and put in the rest. Then I decided I would want to do the tiger next because it's so easily spottable. And in parallel, I picked up the light yellow pieces to fill in the remaining holes. And I kept in mind that there is one more pretty light brown animal close to the center and a darker one next to the giraffe. The reason I didn't go next with the tiger here is because I wanted to have all pieces. So I went over the spread out pieces again and grabbed the other zebra thing, probably an antelope or something, down there, as well as the panda because it's so easy to sort it out. And I'm really not intending to put it together now, but I feel like the piece grabbing process is more efficient if I don't only look for, two more tiger pieces, but also sort out a whole further region. So to put together the tiger most efficiently, I usually try starting with the face because the pieces are most curved here and also have more of this white color on it. And then furtherly going down the body, there are two very wide pieces I know by shape, and then I can put in the rest easily. At this point, I'm grabbing rest pieces again and also the white llama in the center. But for this, I know that you really need all pieces because otherwise it's really hard to put it together. So I once again grab another section in parallel, which is the camel in this case. To assemble the camel, I start with the body pieces that only have that color, and then do the legs. And in parallel, I'm looking at the other remaining pieces and already try to spot in which holes they belong and then put it in. For the llama, I feel like the pieces are very thin and don't hold together very well, so I try to avoid having to move it again. And that's why I've already built some kind of frame to put the pieces in instead of putting the llama together outside of this and then having to move it again. Next, I'm going for the pieces of the lion and the monkey because they have pretty similar colors to me. And once more, I'm grabbing pieces of the remaining lighter orange sections to just fill them in. What you can see here is that I'm putting pieces on the puzzle because I know where they belong, but I'm not trying to put them in because I believe it's easier for me to focus on the grabbing at this point and not get interrupted by only the physical process of trying to put the piece in, because I can still do that later. So that's why sometimes you see single pieces floating around on my puzzle in the or pretty much in the exact position where they belong, but not put in yet. And when I get stuck, I can just go over the puzzle and put in those floating pieces. Yeah, and in the meantime, I put together the lion, and I always start with the four face pieces and then connect the wide body piece, which directly connects to that, and fill in the rest. I know I wanted to continue with the crab here, but I forgot about it when grabbing the pieces and instead went for the rest of the monkey. And then when I finished that, I remembered my original plan and grabbed those shiny oranges, also for the bird in the center, and then the flamingo's legs. The crab and the bird are easily distinguishable, one by the curve of the pieces, and two by having bigger areas of orange for the bird, while the crab has more fine lines on its arms. Well, the next is a snake, and it is pretty hard to me. So I really want to make sure I have all pieces and go grab some again. The upper part you can do by doing the leaf in the background instead of the actual snake, but the pieces don't interlock very well because it's the circle of color typical thing, um, where you have two small pieces going around one bigger. So you should be careful when moving it around. Yeah, and for the rest of the snake, I do remember three or four pieces by shape, which makes it a bit easier. And yeah, but it's still always a rather time-consuming part. There are two reasons I'm continuing with the panda. First, it's rather easy, and I feel like I need this after doing the snake. And two, because I need to free some space. For the panda, I always start with its face, which is, I believe, four pieces, and then the four other pieces that have whites on it, and then just connect those parts. Next, I'm doing the brown animals in the pink region. The coedi is easiest, especially because I already had a lot of it done. Usually I would have continued with the sloth, but I wanted to have all pieces, so I decided to do the little bunny first, which worked pretty well because it was only one line of connecting pieces. Yeah. Yeah, well, and then the sloth confused me a little bit this time. I don't know why, because for some reason I couldn't remember that it has light parts on both body and face. So I struggled way more than I should have. Next, I'm doing the flamingo. And once more, I try to divide it into body section and neck section. And I do that by looking at how much pink is on that piece, because the more pink it has, the lower down the body it belongs. Other than I explained earlier, at this point I don't grab pieces for multiple section anymore, but only for one because I have so little pieces left that it wouldn't make any sense to grab multiple regions. So I only grab pieces that belong to this rhino there, and you can, see the color difference because this gray is a little more purpley than the blues. And while picking those pieces, I also fill in the remaining holes with purple background. And in parallel, also focus on the very purple leaves on the edges up there because they give a good starting point for the rhino. Once this edge is done, I continue with the pieces that are purely gray because they belong to the body, and the more purple background they have on them, the farther down they are. I'm grabbing the four pieces of the bird in the center of the image with this very dark purple wings, and then wanted to continue with the butterflies. But then I sensed that I was struggling a bit with a few pieces I already had sorted out, so I decided not to waste time on it and wanted to continue with filling in some pieces of those leaves. But then again, I realized that it didn't work quite well, so I tried not to waste time again and sort out the frog instead. Well, knowing that the frog is also not an easy part, but I had to do something. Because I still couldn't really fight my way through those butterflies, I decided to actually assemble the frog now, even though I find it a rather hard part. I feel like it was a good decision though, because with fresh eyes, the butterfly went together much more quickly afterwards. Here you can see how I push the pieces closer together and move them as close as possible to the area where I need them. This saves time because my eyes have a shorter path from the loose pieces to the finished puzzle, and it gives me a better overview. Yeah, and from there on, I more or less do all the rest simultaneously. I try to spot things with whites, which I know either belong to the koala or the fox or husky in the middle part there. And the turquoise-ish pieces are the hippo, which are also easily spottable because they have a unique shape. Then eventually I finish with the elephant. Once more, I first do the body, which are the pieces that are totally gray, and then the legs. Yep. And here I only fill in the last pieces, going by more or less shape only. Hope this was helpful or interesting. See you next time.